Alright, good morning. I am going to take a few minutes to go over some basics of Substance Painter again, just to remind you guys, and I'm going to take this all the way through to loading into a render, because I'm on my Mac and I don't want to deal with streaming my Windows PC. I'm just going to do this in Blender, and that just shows you this works in whatever software you want to use. Okay, so without further ado, I have my Kitbash Spaceship, and I'm just going to do a very quick pass at shading this thing. I've already set the HDR to something that is useful, that doesn't have blurry highlights. So there's two choices in here that work pretty well. One is the Studio 3, which just has 3-point lights. Another one that works, like this one might be okay too, as long as we have sharp reflections. Another one that is nice is this one. Just remember, we don't want blurry things. Okay, so how do I shade this thing as quickly as possible? My preferred mechanism for this is to just create some fill layers, group them, and then mask them. And remember, you can mask using the polygon fill tool, or you can mask based on UDIMs, but unless you've laid this thing specifically out to use UDIMs, you'll just want to, you can also use part names, but I didn't name anything in here. So for example, if you were doing part names, you could go in here and say mesh names, and I could select specific items in here. I can also do UDIMs, so I can select individual chunks. But we are just going to use the polyfill tool, which allows us to either select whole objects with this button here. So here, let's demonstrate this. Let's make this a fun color. I often will just kind of get some clown colors in here and then get things assigned. So assign that there. If you feel like the wireframe is too annoying, which it often is, you can come in here to your display settings and scroll down, and you can change the wireframe opacity, which I like to do. And then I'm just going to, like, let's say we're going to do a base color here. Let's see. Select some individual pieces. So we don't want that. You can hit the X key to toggle this. And the fill tools are not super awesome, but they work. We'll select the whole wing. I might as well just pick the object selection mode. But let's see. Okay, you don't have any UV cuts there. Or here. Alright. So, phase 1 done. And maybe these guys here. Let's see. All right, got one pass done, and I'm just going to duplicate this, and I'm going to make this another fun color. I'm going to do red. We're just going to clear this mask. A good thing to do, but sometimes I forget, is to do the selections in a paint layer. so that when you duplicate this, you can just get rid of that paint layer or change its opacity. But let's just add the selections for the other things. I'm not going to do that one. We'll do that one. The X key toggles. Do a third one. All right, and I'm hitting the X key to toggle back and forth between black and white. Go back. Sometimes it's just easier to select more than you want and then to deselect it again. All right, and the other thing is I'm missing that red one. Okay, and let's see, go back to the green one. Let's actually pick this piece here. If you name things and then use naming, it can be really convenient because you can carry that into model changes. So if you swap your model out and you use naming, then all your masks will update appropriately. If I change the UVs drastically, these selections might get screwed up. Should turn on mirroring, make my life easier. Darn it. You can also do this in the UV view, but there's a lot of UVs. All right, you know what? Apparently my model is symmetrical around the y-axis, not the x-axis. Anyway, good enough. Whatever. Not quite whatever. Okay, got my clown colors filled in. And now I just need to decide how I want to paint everything. So this is the easy part. I'm going to say, I'm going to get a default gray color here. Maybe not. Maybe this is a sporty red spaceship. With sporty gray trim. Sorry, I know that's orange. And these are going to be okay, and then the pink bits are going to be accent color. And looks like I need to fix that. Okay, doesn't look like I broke anything. I can also just select polygons. Okay. Probably broke something else because there's always something on the other side. Why not? There's a hole in the model there. Probably would be good to fill it in, but okay. Let me see if I just can't get this last piece here. I just can't win. Let's make another video when I do everything else. It's just gonna have to be that way. You don't want to watch me do this all day. I could select individual polygons. I could paint it. There's many different ways, but this is going to be good enough for now. Okay, base colors are in, mostly. Okay, where do I go from here? I'm going to turn my materials back on. I'm going to save my file. Okay, colors in. How do I make this look cool? So I can go through and I can do individual refinement on each one of these things, or I can also do a global pass on things. So if I go up here and I group this, I'm just going to call this warp. I'm going to make another one grunge. I'm going to make another one. And then I'm going to start filling these things in. So first warp. The thing about like warpiness is we can't really tell what's going on unless we can see the spec. So I'm going to put a temporary color in here. And I'm going to turn off all these other guys. And I'm going to turn the color off on this. And now with this temp color, I can also set my roughness to 0 and have a very shiny thing, and we can see how flat everything is. Mostly flat. And then I can go through and add some warpiness to this thing. So I like to do it just by adding a height channel. Let me open this up a little bit more. And I'm going to increase that, and then I'm going to add a fill and add a mask here. Add a black mask. Add a fill layer. And now I'm going to start adding some stuff. So I'm going to start with just a purlin noise. I'm going to use the 2D purlin noise because I want it to be per panel, and I don't want it to be continuous across the whole model. And then I can just turn down the tiling, and now we can just look at that. So we have some warp across there. I can also change the scale here. This should just give some basic deflection on each one of these panels. Okay, and then I can adjust just how strong that is here. And let's say we want to add just some like panel lines or something like that. So gonna get rid of that. Add a fill, and we could use, now this is where you need to get creative. I'm just doing a demo, so I'm going to try to make this as fast and easy as possible. No. I will do a Worley. And you're probably thinking, well, that doesn't look good at all. And you're right. The thing about Worley is there's actually tons of parameters that can control this thing. So one of the things that controls Worley is the style. And so, like these, if you look at the documentation for a Voronoi, you will see what these different things do. And there's also how does it compute the distance. So basically, this pattern works by picking a point, computing the distance to it, and then that's what you see here. So if I change the scale, you'll see we have a bunch of points, and there's like a disorder parameter here. If I turn off this disorder, it should all line up with the grid, right? Because now we have a bunch of points with my scale frequency. So this is how many grids there are, and then that's how far away each point is from its closest grid. There's different ways to compute that distance, and there's also different styles. So like this is one style, another style, and so on and so forth. And, you know, we could even get away with something like that. Maybe. I don't know. Let's see. Hey, look. Now we have a whole bunch of panels. And we can just turn down the intensity of this thing. And we could also like mask out some areas where we don't want it. So let's turn off that. Let's say we want to get rid of it from these blue pieces here. And I don't actually know which ones those are. Okay. Let's call those windows. And I can go back to our panels and I can add a fill layer. And I can grab fill layer. The Windows mask. And I'll just subtract that. And I could also take it away from the engine bells or whatever that is. And it looks pretty stupid there. So let's remove it from that. I could add a paint, and I could go through the same rigmarole of trying to remove things like that. Or I could just use the mask I've already created. And let's say that's only somewhat interesting. Let's could change the scale. So we have two of them. You can always type in here if you don't have enough. And we could do a add, or we could do a max, or we could do an overlay. I don't know. Or we can do a different pattern. So let's just set this to normal. So remember how we can do, let's see, Voronoi, run style, random color. We can also go back to these. So let's leave it on F1 for now. And so there's different ways you can compute the distance. Manhattan is you don't take the square root. So it'll give you like the sum to distance in X and Y. I don't know the math between Minkowski or Chebyshev, whatever that is. However, we can go back in and add our disorder. So, okay, now we have some interesting things. And so, okay, now we got some junk going on in here. And if I want to control this height, so I already have a really small value there and I'm having trouble controlling it. I can also go into height, and then I can control just how much this particular fill layer is contributing. So I can turn that down. And this is going to change based on my preview resolution. Right now we're looking at a 512 pixels. Okay, so now things are sharper at 1024. It would be cool if I had like a random ramp on each one of those too, but I'm not sure the best way to do that. Let's see. I don't know. If I were to duplicate that again and have one with one mode and the other with the other, and then I can just add it. Then we get a little bit of warping going on. And we also get some edge breakup and junk going on. Okay, good enough. And then it would be good also to get some roughness variation in here. All right, I don't know. Maybe it's dumb. This is a demo. I'm gonna turn this thing off. And now we have our paint that has some stuff going on. And maybe we want to do something as well. Let's make this a panel mask. Add an anchor point. Great. And let's go into our grunge now. Panel mask. And we can control how much contribution there is here. We can add levels to this and remap it. So I can remap so I only have a certain contribution going on. So this sets my minimum, this is my maximum. So we have some color variation there. And then we can change our color. If you want to look at just the color, remember you can go to base color and say, okay, just a touch of variation from each panel. I like that. I could even call this I'm going to pick something, and then we're going to turn it way down. We can leave it that the same, and we can turn this one way down. Subtlety is important, although you also want to be able to see stuff at this level as well. So maybe I want to do some random variation as well. That seems fine, but maybe we want to add another fill, add some grunge. I'm going to choose something high frequency. And I'm just going to turn it. Maybe I'm going to go subtraction, and I'm just going to turn it down. Just give a little bit of breakup. Okay, good enough. Good enough for a demo at least. Okay, so we got some grunge. Remember, like one grunge is fine. If you add another grunge, then you can mix it up a little bit and make it more, have more variation. Okay, and then let's get to the edge. So I baked maps previously, but let me just talk about that. You don't need high-res maps most of the time. So if we look at our, we can look at our curvature. It's like good enough. That was baked at, that could be 1K. Then position and things like that, those are very low frequency. So if you look at position and normal, see how they don't really have any strong variation. If you have tons of tiny parts that are scattered all over, if the resolution is too low, it will bleed from one to another, and that could cause some troubles. But ambient occlusion, this is probably 1K. And then you don't need to bake the normal. That's pretty much useless if you're not baking from a high-res model to a low-res model. And the world space normal, again, is another low-frequency one. When I do my baking, now, something to be aware of, and I haven't validated that this is still the case, but historically, if you bake your world space normal and your position, then these maps are used when it bakes the curvature and occlusion. And so if these are low resolution, even if you bake a high resolution ambient occlusion and curvature, they will pick up the positions from the low res map and be a little pixely. And curvature settings, I used to just crank the secondary rays up, but I found that if you just turn the anti-aliasing up, it can get you the same result without having to go and change it for every single one. So curvature, occlusion, position, and world space normal. So let's add a mask here. There is the mask generator. Oh, I put this in the wrong spot. So the mask generator is nice because it puts a whole bunch of things together. And you can do all this stuff by adding like occlusion and curvature and then fine tuning it, or you can just use the mask generator and then you have to go and like fiddle with this till you get something useful. So if you go in the curvature, there's the same settings. It's like let's say we just are interested in getting our edges nice and sharp. So we're going to worry about that one. And we're going to not worry about ambient occlusion right now. When it says texture 2 and texture, that's referring to these. These are where you can add some breakup. And you see it's using our maps that we baked out. We don't have thickness because we don't care about thickness for this. And if we wanted to use like the height that we are currently using to drive these things, you'd have to bake it out and load it back in again, which is kind of dumb, but it's the way it's always been. So let's add a texture here. Was that a grunge? The problem with doing this is that you don't have tons of control. We can put that in there, and then there's this texture amount. And you can do the same thing with texture number 2. But like, see how we don't have the controls that you would have for projection. We can control tiling, but we can't control whether this is like a triplanar projection. It's just UVs. And I don't know. Let's see. This can be useful, but let's just do this the old-fashioned way. We're going to put a curvature on here, and I'm going to say I only care about, and I should honestly make a preset for this because having to go and turn this down every time is a little bit, you know, it's like why repeat something when you can make a smart mask. Gonna increase the contrast, brightness. These brightness and contrast controls, you'll find them all over Substance, but most of the time they're not terribly useful. The levels would be more useful, but this is kind of like a historical thing they've all had. And we could use textures and stuff like that. Let's see. Like if I turn that on, it's gonna open these up. But I can also just say, okay, I've got some curvature. I can adjust the levels. And you're probably thinking, well, that's way too much, and it is. I'm going to add a fill layer and add a grunge. And styling amount, and I'm just going to change this to try multiply. Okay, so we're getting some breakup there. If I want like sharp damage here, I can then add something like a filter with the histogram scan, which lets me choose a position in here to change from black to white, and then this contrast says how much how soft is it. So if we zoom in here, it's like right now we're seeing the individual pixels because they're still previewing at 1K. If we increase that, then we'll see more. If we increase that further, we'll see a much sharper result. So this is what would happen if you exported your maps at 4K. And we're just going to assume everything's going to work fine and preview it here and adjust this until we're happy with how much we're getting. And you're probably thinking, we could be more purposeful with this, so we can maybe add another grunge map and put another grunge in here. And we can change how this affects things. And all right, so now we've got some great breakup and grunge, and then we just have to choose what material do we want under here. And let's say we wanted like a upper coat of paint and maybe metal in some places. So we will call this edge primer, and then I'm also going to make a new one here called edge metal. And I'm just going to go here, edge primer, and I'm going to add, let's try, add an anchor point. And now our edge metal mask, we're just gonna add a fill, add a black mask, add a fill. We're gonna check that primer mask, and then we're gonna see, we're just gonna set this to red so we can really see what's happening. So right now it's exactly the same, right? So we're going to try a filter. We could blur this, or we could use the bevel. Bevel basically is just computing the distance from the edge. So we're going to turn the distance down. Oh, we're going to, let's see. You can go inside or outside. So see how the distance changes signs? So inside, outside. And you can either do uniform blur or non-uniform blur. I don't remember it probably has more to do with the smoothing here. And probably want to add, because we always want to add some grunge and some levels and stuff like that, I'm just going to add a grunge map here. I'm going to choose something good, and this grunge map is just going to multiply on top of that. So we're going to take away some of it, and then I'm going to add another histogram scan. Which again, I can increase my contrast. I can choose where I'm picking it out. And I can choose how that grunge is affecting things. And now I can make this metallic. And I can make it like steel, or steel. Really, like metals aren't as reflective as you might hope. So we will just set it there, and now it's like, oh hey look, now we have some metally bits that are poking through from our primer. We've got our primer paint here, which we can adjust the color. Let's say let's just change how opaque this is. There. And let's say we want to pick up some of that detail from the edge stuff we were doing. Let's just make another one of these. And save. And if we go back down to our variation mask. Okay, so we got all this stuff going on here, right? And yeah, we're just gonna add an anchor point here. Variation and grunge, and add a fill. And variation and grunge map, and now we're going to do something like filter edge detect. Let's see. High pass. Let's see what we can pull out from this. All right, it's way too much, and I'm not sure I want to get the grunge in there. So I'm gonna move this to, it's like we're looking at that map. Yeah, we're just gonna pull this down and pop it on that. Or even, I guess we're actually pulling this from the warp mask. I don't know, that's okay. We're going to add new levels, and then we can just control how much of this we end up with. Or maybe we add a grunge on top of that. All right, there's so much more we could do. We could even go in here, and there's nothing wrong with adding a black mask. I always like to do things in folders just because it means that you can stick more stuff in there. Like, let's say if I want to go back to the blue paint. So now I have my folder here, and if I want to add some more variation in here, just add another paint layer, add a black mask, add a fill, add some more grunge, add some remember that these blend modes can be really useful. For example, if I wanted to do an HSV on this, which is very helpful, if we change this color mode to pass through, it means that its color is the previous, like all the results from up to this point. And so then if I add a filter to the color, I can do something like an HSV or HSL. And now I can adjust the hue there, maybe change the saturation or the lightness. And it actually is doing nothing. Probably because color C. I don't know. Pass through in layers gets weird. Layers mode is pass through, and this is pass through. Did I not set that? Okay, there we go. I knew I was missing something. Okay, so now we can do some just fine tuning on the color there. And this is nice because then if your art director says, "Ooh, I really like that, but I wish that the blue was a different color," then when you go through here, and you never want to, I guess you don't want to commit to things because they're always being changed. I can just put a fill layer on there and base color, turn that off. I'm just going to sample the color originally, turn my fill layer on, and I can do an HSV or I can pick another color, and then this HSV is going to do the color variations on top of that. So let's say our director said, "Yeah, I really like it, but let's make it a different color." Could do that. And then when they say, "Oh, never mind, I like gray better," you can just turn that off. Anyway. Maybe this makes things shinier too. Okay, if you wanted more directionality to your grunge, which I think is what I was doing here, let's see. And you could also do cavities. And again, we could use the generator, the mask generator, or we could use a fill layer. Like, if you wanted to just grab your AO map project, turn that off, and it's like, oh, there's your ambient occlusion map. You can pop that in there. And so this is the same thing as using add generator ambient occlusion. It just, the ambient occlusion doesn't, this fill layer doesn't have any controls and you'd have to do it yourself. Here, there's ambient occlusion. You can invert it and you can adjust the balance and the blur and things like that. Increase the contrast. You could add textures, or we can add a grunge. And we're just gonna say things are gritty in here. And I'm not loving that a ton, but it's okay. Right, I would further refine that. Then drips. Let's see if we have any grunges that look drippy. Yeah, that one looks like I'm just looking for something to add some detail. It's like, ideally, I would have some custom ones. And see how uniform everything is? I don't know. All right, and I mean, this is no good, but we could just add a paint, and by default, we just set it all to black. So this is a brush, which is convenient because I can quickly go and remove things, and we're just gonna multiply everything with that. Oh, I'm putting this in cavities, no wonder. Okay. I'm gonna put these back in drips. And so I okay. Right, so kind of useless, but we can make it more helpful. Because now I can reveal stuff by using an actual paint. So now I can reveal some drippiness. Maybe down here. I can hide it again. I can reveal some here, but I don't think any's projecting there. I can reveal it there. I can reveal it here. On this side too. And then I'm just going to change the material for the drips. All right. There's so much more that could be done. Look at your references. And remember that when you export your textures, you can set the resolution as an override. So here's your export location, your preset. And I don't think I have any presets that I've set up here the way I like them to be. These typically have too much going on. Like if you look at the result, it's like, I already know what the color space is because I haven't done anything fancy with the color space. So I actually, let's just go here. We'll take the RenderMan one and see how many maps there are. So let's duplicate this. And I don't care about the color space. This is really, I don't care about the mesh because everything is getting the same maps. So this is just color and a UDIM. And same thing here. This is roughness and a UDIM, metallic and a UDIM. Normal, UDIM, and I would call this height. And I don't have any emissive, and I don't have any opacity. So that's really all I need to export. If you add user channels, or if you add extra maps, like let's say you're trying to drive a clear coat, then you would adjust things here. Let's say we wanted a clear coat. So I have my new preset. However, I'm going to say coat roughness and add that in here. So I'm just going to make a new gray one. If you want to do like RGB masks, then you would click this one, and then you can set the RG and B individually. If you want to do just grayscale maps, then you do gray, and so on and so forth. So you can't set individual channels for an RGB, but you can set individual channels for an RG, R plus G plus B, or an R plus G plus B plus A. Rough and UDIM. If you need to know which special things you have, they're here. And then I go to my general settings and I set this to my new one. The first time you make it, it'll always be on the very bottom, and then after that you gotta go find it. File type, you can specify that in the thing, or you can just choose what you want. If you say based on the output template, in the output template, you can specify the bit depth and the file type. So if you want higher fidelity normal maps and height maps, that's taken care of here. And the size, you can do based on each texture size, which is cool, except that then you have to preview it at that size. And so I will just choose something. Often I would do 4K. I'm just going to do 2K for now. And I'm going to choose the location. And away we go. All the names are nice and tidy. Oh, except no, metal got messed up. So I'm gonna go fix metal. I missed the parentheses. So I'm actually gonna go into that folder and delete those. Export it again. Now everything's named all nice and conveniently. And save my settings, save my project. And now, because I don't have Houdini and RenderMan working on here, we're just gonna go into Blender and do the same thing. I'm using an IBL to light this thing. And you know the routine. Okay, I don't know if I can drag and drop in here. Okay, I could, great. Color, single image, it's a UDIM. And I don't remember the expectation here. Okay, got my colors, everything's beautiful. Gonna get my normal maps. So color space sRGB, color space non-color. Same thing in RenderMan. So getting our normal map on there. We could do a lot more, but for this demo, this will do. Like rivets and things would probably be a good idea. Metalness. Yeah, okay. Metalness. Same thing, metalness is not a color. And it is a UDAM. Now our edges are metallic. And finally our roughness. Roughness is also not a color. Okay, we did export one extra map. Oh, well, we don't actually have an extra map. But let's say we wanted to do something like car paint on the orange part. I lost my window. Okay, window has been found. Just going to save that. I'm going to go back to substance. And I'm going to go into the texture set settings. So there's two ways we could do this. We can add a new channel in here. Like clear coat roughness. Or, so I already set the export setting to work with coat roughness. So if we look in coat roughness, it's got nothing right now. And if I go into my orange paint, which ideally I would have named these like orange paint, but and so in this default one, I'm going to add coat roughness and just set this to 0. And okay, I can use coat roughness as a roughness map, or I can just use it as a mask. For the sake of this, I'm just going to use it as a mask, and I'm going to set the coat roughness to 1 there. And if we look here under coat roughness, then we got black everywhere and 1 there. And then in the shader, I'm going to modulate that. So export textures again, and my material, and I have roughness too. So I'm just going to export that again. Save settings, save my scene, and now if we go back into Blender, now I should have a roughness too. So I'm not seen, so I did something dumb. So it says it wrote RGH2. Classic Blender, I didn't set it up. Output templates, my export roughness to, it needs to have something hooked up to it. So we're just going to do coat roughness from the gray channel. Again, I could have done other things here, but for now, this is what we're doing. Okay, so now you see here, now I have coat roughness. So I'm gonna go back, save my settings, save my scene, go back here, and now refresh this, and now I have finally this extra thing. And UDIMs, 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 UDIMs. This is a non-color. This is a UDIM tile. And if we preview this as our base color, then we have a mask. So in here we should have a coat and a coat roughness. So what we're going to do is hook our roughness up to the coat roughness. And I know this is silly, but clear. Roughness goes into coat roughness. The weight. So now we need a clear coat, right? Actually, undo that. Coat roughness. Okay, so our roughness map is going to go into the weight here. So now we have a clear coat and we have the regular one. So if I change this, see how we're getting two highlights. So we're going to leave this at low roughness, and I can plug in I could plug in my roughness. So this is the equivalent of a clear coat on top of the model, right? And then this is the color it's going to tint things. So this is like a clear varnish. And I am going to plug my roughness into my coat roughness, just because I want the variation and breakup, but I'm probably going to remap this as necessary. And now if I go into my regular roughness, then I can, or my regular highlight, I can break that connection and I can make this a bigger highlight. Ideally this is going to happen with the mask, which means I've got to do some mixing. So take this mask is for the factor, and so the white is going to be one of them and the black is going to be the other one. Again, this is all applicable to RenderMan, just more things. So I'm going to plug my roughness in there. So that's my default roughness, and then this is the roughness I'm controlling using whatever I want. And this result goes into roughness, and so now I have a control for the orange paint roughness separate from the control for the clear coat roughness, and everything else is going to still read the map. So again, like blending this as materials would be easier. And roughness mask, weight for my clear coat. So if we were to break this connection, so no clear coat. This now drives the roughness of my underline layer. And then as I increase the weight on this, we should get a secondary specular on top of that. Anyway, there's more work to do, and I didn't do my prep work before we did this, so now I'm not getting it to work. Probably because we need to do another thing like this, where we connect that again. This becomes metallic. And then this whole result goes into the metallic channel, and then I can control how much metallic is happening under the clear coat paint. And I could even get fancy if I want to do something crazy. I could write out a normal map. Let's see. So I'm gonna mix this result. So tangent space texture maps, they are 0.5 and 0.5 and 1 by default. If you blend this with a tangent, like the default tangent space color, we get a normal map. We can control how much we get there. And then if we plug this into a normal map, and we mix this, color, actually we're going to mix the vector, normal 1 gets our normal map. And then if we plug this combined result, we're going to blend this using our roughness 2 mask. And so what this is a blend between our two things. Right, so now we got our flake normal and we've got our regular normal. If we plug this in here to normal, and plug our material back in, then we have a car paint with a really high frequency, or really big chunks. Alright, and we just need to fix this so it's not quite so wacky. It would take me some more work to get everything working right. I think I've got mostly right. Unclamp that. Uniform. I feel like there's something not quite working here. Maybe the roughness is just too high. So the and the roughness. Anyway, it still needs more work. There. Metallic paint. And, you know, I blasted away some of the other behaviors when I did all my mixing, which I'd have to like redo. And we could do like view dependent colors and things like that. And the reality is that when you're doing your damaged car paint, you want to look at some reference like this. So, I mean, that's much more interesting than just randomly like adding gunk in there. But that's the end of the demo, and good luck. Talk to you guys later.